Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Pope Francis arrives in Washington, D.C. today for the start of his historic U.S. tour. The Pope will meet with President Obama Wednesday and address a joint session of Congress on Thursday. On Friday, Pope Francis will address the United Nations General Assembly in New York City before departing for Philadelphia on Saturday. As Pope Francis arrives in Washington, a group of 100 women, many of them undocumented, are also set to arrive in D.C. after marching 100 miles from a detention center in York, Pennsylvania, in order to greet the Pope. Domestic worker Sylvia Gonzalez, who is walking with the group, said the march is intended to send a message that families belong together and should not be separated by U.S. immigration policies.
The message for him, it's for peace, for dignity, for love, for all the families together. My mom lives in Mexico. I've been here for 15 years in USA, and I don't see my mom for these 15 years. I live here, and my daughter and my granddaughter live here also. And I know I can go to see my mom, but I can come back.
The Pope had reportedly wanted to begin his U.S. trip by crossing the Mexican border, but the plan had to be scrapped for logistical reasons. In January, Pope Francis said, quote, "To enter the United States from the border with Mexico would be a beautiful gesture of brotherhood and support for immigrants." In news from the campaign trail, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker has dropped out of the 2016 presidential campaign amidst dwindling financial backing and plummeting support in the polls. In his announcement, he called on other Republican candidates to help, quote, "clear the field" and oust current frontrunner Donald Trump.
I encourage other Republican presidential candidates to consider doing the same so that the voters can focus on a limited number of candidates who can offer a positive, conservative alternative to the current frontrunner.
Governor Walker's withdrawal comes as a new CNN poll shows former Hewlett-Packard CEO Carly Fiorina rising to second place. In a new CNN poll, Trump remains the frontrunner with 24% support. In other campaign news, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush said he supports the passage of the DREAM Act and comprehensive immigration reform after DREAM activists disrupted his speech to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Houston Monday.
As I've been consistently for the DREAM Act kids to get a path to citizenship, I've been consistently for it, and I'll continue to be consistently for it, irrespective of what the political ramifications of that are.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is kicking off his first state visit to the United States today in Seattle, Washington. President Xi is expected to meet with technology execs and tour Boeing's factory in Everett, Washington. On Thursday, he'll leave for Washington, D.C., where he'll meet with President Obama. U.S. officials say Russia has begun flying surveillance drones over Syria following reports Russia slated to deploy 2,000 troops to its new airbase near the port city of Latakia. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel and Russia will coordinate military operations in Syria. This comes as the United States has also opened military talks with Russia over Russia's support for President Bashar al-Assad. In Guatemala, an indigenous leader who'd fought against a palm oil factory that has been polluting a river with pesticides has been killed. 28-year-old Rigoberto Lima Choc was fatally shot outside a local courthouse one day after the court ordered the 6-month closure of the factory. The United Nations has described the factory's pollution as causing a, quote, ecological disaster. At least 100 people have been killed in northern Nigeria in 4 seemingly coordinated bombings Sunday evening. Authorities have accused the militant group Boko Haram. This comes as UNICEF says the number of children forced to flee from Boko Haram's violence in Nigeria and neighboring countries has topped 1.4 million. In Burkina Faso, the leader of an apparent military coup has released the detained president after a weekend of tense negotiations led by the president of Senegal. Last week, the Presidential Guard, which is loyal to Burkina Faso's former longtime president, Blaise Compaoré, detained interim President Michel Kafando and dissolved the transitional government. At least a dozen people were killed in the violence. A new compromise plan calls for President Kafando to be returned to office, the leaders of the coup to receive immunity, and new elections to be held November 22nd. In Yemen, thousands of supporters of the Houthi rebels celebrated the first anniversary of the group's takeover of the capital, Sana'a. The ongoing conflict between Houthi rebels and U.S.-backed Saudi-led forces loyal to Yemen's ousted president has killed at least 4,000 people and sparked a humanitarian crisis. In news from Europe, Hungary's passed legislation allowing the army to be deployed to the border as thousands of refugees fleeing violence in their home countries continue to attempt to cross the continent in efforts to reach northern Europe. The new law allows Hungarian troops to use rubber bullets, tear gas, smoke and flash grenades and net guns against refugees. Volkswagen says 11 million diesel cars worldwide have been equipped with the same software that was used to cheat on emissions tests in the United States. The news comes as the Justice Department is reportedly conducting a criminal investigation into reports Volkswagen illegally installed devices in certain diesel cars in a deliberate bid to avoid EPA emissions rules. Congress says it will also conduct hearings into the matter. A federal judge in Georgia has sentenced the former executive of a peanut company to 28 years in prison for crimes related to a salmonella outbreak that killed 9 people and sickened hundreds more. Stuart Parnell, the former head of Peanut Corporation of America, was convicted of 71 criminal counts for knowingly shipping salmonella-tainted peanut butter from the Georgia facility to companies like Kellogg's. U.S. service members have come forward to describe how they were ordered to ignore child sexual abuse by allies in Afghanistan, even when the abuse occurred on U.S. bases. The New York Times reports superiors told service members to look the other way when Afghan colleagues abuse boys because, quote, it's their culture. In one case, Dan Quinn, a former Special Forces captain, was relieved of his command for beating up an Afghan militia commander for keeping a boy chained to his bed as a sex slave. A former hedge fund manager is facing widespread outrage after his startup company, Turing Pharmaceuticals, hiked the price of a life-saving drug by more than 5,000%. The drug, Daraprim, is used to treat a disease caused by a common parasite which can afflict patients with HIV. Turing founder Martin Shkreli attempted to justify the price hike in an interview with Bloomberg News.
So, at the end of the day, the price per course of treatment to save your life was only $1,000. And we know these days in modern pharmaceuticals, cancer drugs can cost $100,000 or more. Rare disease drugs can cost $500,000. Daraprim is still underpriced relative to its peers.
But my understanding was that to actually produce this pill, what cost only $1?
It costs very little to make Daraprim.
Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton said in a tweet, quote, price gouging like this in the specialty drug market is outrageous. And Monday marked the 4th anniversary of Troy Davis's execution. Troy Anthony Davis was put to death by the state of Georgia September 21, 2011, despite major doubts about evidence used to convict him of killing police officer Mark McPhail. His death helped fuel the national movement to abolish the death penalty. You can go to our website at democracynow.org to see our coverage the night of his death outside the prison where he was killed.